Hello YouTube, good afternoon, I hope you're doing well. I come to you from a field. Why? I don't know, it's different, isn't it? I wanted to do something a little bit different because this episode of the Spring Cuts, well, last week we were in deload jail, which means I can't train for the second half of the week. But by the time I found out I was in deload jail, we've got no gym content. I feel like I've rehashed a lot of the life stuff, so I thought I'd mix it up. And this week we actually have a Q&A, so I'm going to go over some questions first, and then at the end talk a little bit about the process, the deload, and basically just give the cut update, I suppose. But before that, we're in a field. Got a flask of tea. You can tell it's not mine because it's yellow, not black. I wouldn't buy a yellow flask for Josh. Got that buys yellow flasks. What was that? What does that say about a guy that buys yellow flasks? Probably very comfortable in his masculinity. Am I not? I don't know. I'm drinking out of it, right? And I'm putting it on YouTube, so that's fine. Busting. Yeah, I'm not in gym clothes, which is rare. So I guess let's get to the questions and see what people wanted to find out. So this is a mix of some questions from people on Instagram, some questions from friends, and a couple from other coaches as well. So if you did ask a question, shout out, watch all the way through because you might see the answer to your question, which I'm sure you can't wait, because I am a beacon of knowledge, right? Oh, and these questions are going to be a mix of, well, there's a lot, they're mostly about training, but there's a few personal questions in there. There's a few about, I guess, the process of coaching as well. So it's a mixed bag. It's be interesting. Let's talk about it. Question number one, spit or swallow? I don't understand in regards to what. Maybe ask your mom that question. I'm joking though, because your mom, I've met your mom and she's lovely. So I'm joking, not your mom. If I was gonna spit or swallow, probably just straight 50-50. I'd just do a bit of both. Might as well get the best of both worlds. Hovis best of both. Here we go. Question number two, based on my current habits, what do you think is the biggest thing holding me back right now on my current habits? Well, I don't know what your current habits are, but I assume maybe you mean about me. I guess I'm gonna have to answer it as me because I don't know what your habits are specific to you. So based on my current habits, what do I think is the biggest thing holding me back right now? Phone use is a big one. I think that's something that a lot of people will relate to these days, using the phone too much. I think that's a big issue for me. Routine, since dieting I've got nailed down. I do think when you get structured into a diet and when you bring more discipline in, your routine definitely improves. And off of the back of that, when your routine improves, I think it was Jocko Willink spoke about discipline equals freedom, right? Listen, the more disciplined you get, the more freedom you have access to. And I know that sounds a little bit backwards and it sounds wrong, because it's like, well, the more restricted I am, the more freedom I have. Yes, because all of the things that you want to do but you can't, discipline can open the door for that, whether that's more money, whether that is a relationship, whether that is a career opportunity. Discipline is the thing that can open the doors that you don't currently have access to. So even though you seem free doing whatever you want at whatever time and abusing yourself and doing all of the quote unquote wrong things, that's not true freedom, because there's still things that you want to do which you're not yet able to, right? Maybe not right now, but can still, most times of the year, go out for nice food, have a couple of drinks, do this, do that, right? There's just little times throughout the year that I'll really lock in to get a good result. But the rest of the time, because I'm doing the right thing most of the time, I still get the fuck around points to do a little bit of the bad. Question number three, how do you individualize programs instead of giving generic templates? How do I individualize programs instead of giving generic templates? Well, it's quite easy, right? I know that probably sounds stupid, but you just don't fucking copy and paste, right? I might have the skeleton, and I spoke about that before, that there's a lot of training programs, as an example. There's a skeleton programs that I'll use that have the same, or at least a similar structure, right? And there's a few different drafts of those, and I'll pick that based on what the person's goals are, and if it's very similar to somebody else's. If it isn't broke, don't fix it, right? A doctor will write the same prescription, give or take a little bit, for different patients with the same issue, right? But within that, when it comes to things like exercise selection, if a person doesn't gel with a specific movement, maybe it's their limb lengths just don't really lend themselves to being good at that movement, obviously we'll pick a different one. If a client just really fucking hates a certain style of training, if they are to be consistent in their training and get the most out of it, they need to be consistent. And the only way you can be consistent is by enjoying what you do, to some extent, because you're not always going to enjoy every single part of it. But obviously it's based on communicating with the individual, right? week to week, especially like the check-in process, it's like, well, what's going well? What are you enjoying? What's working, right? And it's through that communication that we can begin molding perfect plan for that perfect person, because what is optimal generically is not optimal for everyone, because everyone's different, right? So yeah, just communication. It's the same with diet, right? Yes, maybe in an ideal world, everyone would be in a strict meal plan with the perfect food and the perfect chronometer micronutrient breakdown, but not everyone's able to do that. Some people have different jobs where meal prep may be harder to do, as much as I say everybody can do it. It's about working with the individual from a bit more of a partnership, right? Working out what's going to work for both of us. Granted, sometimes there are some absolutes, and you do need to change a person's behaviour to make something different happen. They are where they are because of a result of what they've thought or what they've tried in the past. So you can't come into a training plan thinking you're going to do everything that you want or everything that you like to do, because that's what you've already been doing, and that's why you are where you are, right? So we are going to have to change some things. But question number 4, what does a check-in look like? Good question. It's the most important part of the process. Typically, well, let's talk about what we ask of a client first, right? Phase number 1 is the client checking in. So within a check-in, they will send over their progress photos, first and foremost. They will send over, the gold standard for me is a video summary, where they will talk about their week at depth, right? I like this to feel like a chat between two friends, right? Kind of like a catch-up, shall I say. Because I used to have like a questionnaire where I'd ask people specific things about their week, and that was good in the beginning because it gave structure to what they were talking about, and it gave me the information I was looking for. Granted, that will already be given in the sheet anyway, so me asking a question, how's training gone, I can see that in the data. Have they progressed? How were they motivated to train, right? And they're going to say in the video summary, yes, it was, your sessions were good this week or whatever. But I find giving somebody more of an open-ended question of how was your week gone, they will talk about what's important to them. They will talk about what they've struggled with. They will naturally bring to light what are the biggest glaring problems, and even if they're avoiding talking about those, I can see that in the sheet anyway. So check-in photos, they'll send me over their video summary, and obviously they will have their completed sheet. And what a sheet looks like, you will have seen some bits and bobs in previous YouTube videos, but it's basically all their information from how their training is going, what sessions they did that week, if they missed any, are they doing it in the right order, in the right sequence, have they progressed in their training, were they motivated to train, their nutrition, were they accurate to meal plan, or have they tracked their macros if they're tracking macros, are they hungry, is digestion moving well. Basically all of this data, both quantitative and also qualitative, in the form of how do you feel, etc. And then using all of that information, I will take a look at that, and then what I will do is make notes of their video summary as I'm watching it, and then I will give the feedback back to them, focusing on the most important things and giving them the focuses for the next week, right? So if steps was the biggest problem from last week and it's the thing that's going to make the most impact, if we correct, then next week, guess what? Your focus is steps. We're going to concentrate on that. Yes, maybe your hydration was a little bit poor. Maybe your food accuracy was a little bit off, but if you're going from doing 1,000 steps, right, to 10,000 steps, that's going to be a bigger difference, right? Or say, for example, if everything else is in an okay place, let's say this actually, let's say you're having 4 to 5 off plans a week, right? And at the same time, your step goal is 10,000, but you're getting about 9,000 on average per day. What's the point in me asking them to simultaneously focus on getting an extra 1,000 steps, which is not going to make that much difference, as opposed to let's tackling where are we having these off-plan meals? Is it from stress? Is it from lack of organization? So therefore you're making too many decisions, you don't have like that structure and routine in place. What is the reason we're having off plans, right? Find that first. Once we've identified that problem, what's the solution to that? That's the focus for this week. I'm not going to nag you about a few missing steps, because that's the check-in process. We look at the data, we give the feedback, and then there's also a midweek check-in where we'll just see, based on last week's feedback, how well things are going, right? So that's fucking support. I'm just there, right, with an arm around your shoulder, like guiding you to the result. What's more important for my goal? Question number 5 is this. I don't know, I'm losing track. Training intensity or consistency? This is a question of like what's more important, diet or training? They're both important, right? It doesn't matter if you're showing up consistently, but then you're literally going to the gym every single day. In fact, I saw this, right? Working as a PT, a pure gym, I'd see people come in doing the same workouts, doing the same classes, and they'd have the same complaints all the time of, I'm just showing up all the time and I'm putting the effort in, but I'm not really seeing progress. Why? Well, probably lack of intensity. Things aren't where they need to be within your training, so you can do that as much as you want, but it doesn't matter. And on the flip side, you can be incredibly intense in your training, but if your training once every 2 weeks or a couple of sessions, progress is gonna be slower, right? Way slower. So I don't like this conversation of, is it this or that? Is this more important or is that more important? Me, identify what is the most important thing in the beginning. I would argue consistency in the beginning, getting consistent with your training, because once that becomes habitual, once that becomes a routine, it'll take care of itself. So get consistent, and then once you're consistent, learn how to be intense. You can't do one or the other and expect to get results, because both are required. You need to do the work, and you need to do the work well. If one is missing, then progress isn't going to happen, right? You need to learn how to be competent with all pieces of the puzzle that is getting into shape, right? Oh, but that's really hard and I can't focus on all at once. Yes, it's not easy to do, but that is what is required, right? And you will improve over time, right? Just because you're not good at one thing now doesn't mean that over time, with slowly chipping away, you're going to get better. And then people have this opinion of, they look at me and they say, well, how are you doing all of these things, right? How are you managing all these things? And how is your diet perfect? How is your training perfect? It wasn't for a long time. I had to slowly get better at them. And now I find it easier to do everything right than I did at the beginning, trying to do one thing right, because that's that adaptation phase. Once that adaptation phase is over and you've been doing it for a while, it does become, don't shoot me, easy. Simple is probably a better word, because it's still not easy. Question number 6, what are the most common training mistakes that you see? Coming back to the previous point, not enough intensity. Granted, that is something that you have to learn to do over time, but you should be trying to push that envelope when I get a little bit closer to failure. Training accuracy, right form. People just training. In fact, people chasing intensity or chasing logbook progression with a complete disregard to what is your training accuracy. That would be a big mistake. I was guilty of this in the beginning when I was like chasing bench PRs. I would basically, there'd be no space for me to not add an extra rep that week, or we're going to add extra weight this week, right? And in me constantly chasing that progression, my form would break down, and in fact this brought about a plateau and my results started to get worse over time. Granted, that's not to say that you need to chase perfect accuracy. Competency is what I would say. Back to the previous point, you need to be competent at a thing, not perfect, just competent. Once you're doing it well enough, then you can push that envelope forward. Yeah, I would say chasing logbook numbers in complete disregard to your form, because this is going to cause injury or may even start a plateau, right? I always say the way that I talk about this is, if your lift has gone up and improved, right, but we've changed another variable and that is your form, you have to look at the average stimulus of those two things, right? We don't know if that's a progression. If we keep the form correct and over the course of a few weeks take a little progression, we know that things are moving up and you're progressing forward. And the progress will come once you've earned it and once you've built the muscle to facilitate for that. Other training mistakes, just lack of consistency overall. I'd say those are the biggest ones. Question number 7, how do you measure if a program is actually working? What phase of training are you in? If you're trying to grow muscle, we want to see scale weight increasing slowly over time. We should be seeing logbook numbers increase over time. Again, not with a disregard to form. We should be seeing over a much longer period of time things actually looking better in the mirror. Are we seeing progress within that? Is form improving? Is another metric we could look at. How do you feel? Those are the main things to see if muscle growth is occurring. Stronger, heavier, look bigger. Simple. In terms of dieting, again, visually, are we looking better? Is the scale weight coming down? And are we maintaining performance? Yes, we can expect in the back end of a diet for a little bit of strength to drop, but it shouldn't be happening very early. If it is, deload or more food, or you're going more aggressive, or it could be an outside stressor. That's as simple as it needs to be. Question number 8, how should I be progressing week to week? Weight, reps, or something else? Primarily, both of those things. I like to, personally with me, most of my programs will have a rep range or 2 rep ranges if we're working in a down set or some other kind of intensifier. And what I like to do is get people to progress through the rep range, e.g. reps. For most movements, there are some bigger compounds where I might get them to actually progress with weight at the start of a phase, because actually if you're doing 5 to 10 and you're down at the bottom range of that rep range, it can actually be a little bit easier to add a 2.5 or to add a couple kg, right? If you've got especially those micro plates, it actually makes more sense to do that than try and add another rep. But for the most part, progress through the rep ranges. Then once you've hit the top of that rep range, then take a weight progression. Those are the main two ways to progress over time. However, improvements to your accuracy, the way in which you move, also is a sign of progression. Moving with a more accurate or longer tempo, spending longer under tension, and being able to perform the same number of reps is another sign of progression. Even having a shorter rest period and still maintaining performance is another sign of progression. Increasing in volume is another way to progress. But just be very careful the way in which you do that, because you come out of runway and it needs to be recoverable, if that makes sense. But if you're doing more volume and still maintaining performance, again, that's another progression. Frequency, if you're training the muscle group more frequently, which obviously comes into volume, because with more frequency opens up an opportunity for more volume, although not necessarily. So you've got to think about all these different variables, right? Because so many people, again, get focused on the logbook, but the logbook for most people will only really track the weight and the reps, and people can get frustrated when they're not making progress. But actually, if you were to look at the sets week to week and compare them, you might see that even though you haven't added reps or added weight, actually your control of the weight and the way in which you're moving, it looks smoother, it looks cleaner, you're handling that weight better, and therefore you can be rest assured that is a small progression, and that extra rep is coming real soon, right? But primarily weight and reps, that's what you really want to drive for. Again, without completely disregarding accuracy. Not perfect, a little bit of body English is going to happen from time to time. Question number 8, what does sustainable fitness really mean? Sustainable fitness. Well, look, my opinion when it comes to training, and one of the biggest problems that I see with people not making progress or struggling in the long term to actually see changes happen, is because it's far too seasonal, right? It is seasonal, it is. But for those people that will train really hard in the few weeks or couple months before a holiday and expect to get into good shape and expect to maintain that good shape, or for those that just want to jump in and out, right? Minute now, and then for the other 8 months of the year, I'm not doing anything. You're spending more time living a bad lifestyle that's going to keep pushing you to give you more, to be putting more weight on, to be getting more out of shape, for everything to fall apart. Training is a lifestyle. A diet is not something that you do part of the year, it's something that you should be sticking to year round. A caveat to that, what I'm doing now with no off plans, no bad food, there might be periods of the year where you lock in and it becomes much higher on the priority list, right? And you really prioritize your training and you really push yourself. There are other periods where you'll be more on to just slow maintaining, growing, whatever it is. But you can't drop the wall completely. And like this, I want to have certain parts of the year where I enjoy myself. Christmas, I'll eat like a fucking pig. There'll be a week of the year where I'll go on holiday and I'll treat myself like shit. But for the rest of the year, I'm training, I'm eating well, and even if it's really slowly, I'm still pushing that needle forward slower. Right, some periods of the year, other times just creeping. But I'm always progressing, and I'm never completely disregarding myself. Is there any time of the year where I go without water? No, I need to drink it to survive. Is there any time of the year where I go without food? You could argue in a diet, but no, yes, I need it to survive. Is there any time of the year where I go without sleep? Very rarely, all right, and it's not by choice. So physical exercise and eating a good diet is not something, in my humble opinion, in everyone's best interest that you should choose to do. You should be doing it a little bit, right? Just a little bit, just enough to keep you healthy. You don't have to be a bodybuilder, you don't have to be this extravagant person, but it will be in your best interest to look after yourself year round. And maybe there's other times where you look after yourself a little bit more, and there's other times where you have to look after yourself a little bit less, and that's okay. But again, if you're just hopping in and out of the game, right? You're not giving it. Your goals don't care that you tried really hard for a few months. They care that you try year round. And you need to, in order to get your goals, you need to give them what they want, right? Because they're selfish and they're greedy. That is what it is. Question number 9. Question number 9. What are my strengths physically and mentally when it comes to training? I can make myself suffer for quite a long time. I think that's been evident. I couldn't always do that. Something's been cultivated over time, although I would say when I used to play video games as a kid, I always liked grindy video games. I like playing things on the hardest difficulty and trying to beat it. I've always liked the challenge aspect. I've got the feeling, maybe this is ego, of doing things that other people aren't willing to do and then being like, look, I could do this. You're not doing this and I'm doing this. This happens especially as I get towards the end of a dieting phase. I get into this frame of mind. I have to remind myself, look, this is a decision. You're not better than anyone else. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Stop having this comparison thing. But especially when I'm feeling fucked and I'm looking lean and I'm in good shape, I'm there. There's a certain mentality, especially when I'm like, take for example my part-time job where people are being rude to me, or people are being pricks, right? Because people can be, and that should be expected. There's a certain part of me that's like, look, you don't know what I'm doing. You ain't working as hard as I'm working. And I like that feeling, as long as it doesn't become an arrogance. I can take pride in it, but I have to be very careful it doesn't become an arrogance, so I can do that. As much as I struggle with actually establishing it, I do feel, and I think this is most people, I've always struggled with routine and being organised. I'm not going to say it, fuck, I'm going to say it, ADHD-esque brain. I've struggled with executive function for a long time and getting things organised, and I struggle with timekeeping and all of these things. Just ask my girlfriend. I'm late regularly. I struggle with all of that. But when I'm actually in it and I've implemented it, I feel good. I like being in that little box and picking things off and getting things. Like, I love Google Sheets, I love Google Calendar, and that really works well for me when it comes to training, right? Not essential, but it does work well. The rest of it, I think most of it, I've just learned to love the process. I think people talk about acquired taste with food, right? And people say, I think until you've lived it, so many people are like, I love my cake too much, I love my chocolate too much, I love my sweets, oh, no, I love a drink. I fucking love a drink. Perfect example, right? I'm a big drinker. I was a complete pisshead in my early 20s. I love a drink now. I love getting on the beers. I do genuinely, I love it, right? And there's often times where I'll say to my friends sometimes, oh, I need to stop drinking, and I don't think I really enjoy it, but I do. And anyone who, in the moment, it's great. And when I first started dieting, I really struggled to give that up. But now that I've done it for 5 weeks into the diet, 4 weeks into the diet, now that I've actually given it up, the acquired taste of someone who doesn't drink and is sober at the moment, I enjoy that. I think the things right now that you find difficult or don't think you'd enjoy, I think if you stuck with them for long enough and you saw the pros, because in the beginning you only focus on the cons, which means I can't do this, I can't do that, going back to the discipline argument, I think if you stick with it for long enough, then you'll realise actually you might enjoy the lifestyle more than what you're actually currently going through, which is probably a lifestyle using food and alcohol to cope with the stresses of life. We can use gym to cope with the stresses of life. Jesus Christ, it's been my anchor for a very long time. Question number 10. How do you handle clients who aren't adhering to the plan? Fucking shout at them. Listen, you prick. Why are you not eating on plan? Why are you not fucking following your training plan? Look, there are many coaches out there where it is drill sergeant approach. Listen, bro, we need things to be better. You're training enough. And sometimes, right, there's a time to push and there's a time to pull. And there's different points where different approaches are necessary with different clients. I truly believe that. There are some times where I do need to get quite straight to the point with a client to really roll them up, because they need to understand that the emotion is very powerful. And as long as it is channeled into the right places and it is a short thing and it's not something that it becomes neurotic and that stays with them for a long time, I do think frustration and anger with their current position can be channeled into overcoming that first step, that hardest thing, right? But especially in the long term, just constantly nagging a person and belittling them and getting angry with them is not the best way to get a tune out of them, right? Sometimes you need to know the deeper reason as to why are they not adhering to plan, because you won't understand it. A lot of coaches, as an example, with my part-time job, it's shift work, it's late nights and things move around, and I work alongside people who struggle with many of the same things that my clients do, right? I even coach a couple of the people who I work with, right, as an example. And I think if a client isn't adhering to the plan, you need to find out the reason why. And after finding out the reason why, come up with a solution that you're both willing to work towards, right? And phase it up. Jesus Christ, the fucking chair's broke on me, can't. A little bit. Whew. Jesus. Phase it out as well. Don't expect them to fix it. It's like I was saying before, don't expect them to fix everything at once, because you can't do that. Give them the first domino, the thing that is causing most of the problem right now. For a lot of people, food, right? They're getting fucking takeaway all the time, they're eating off plan, whatever it is. Give them a little bit of structure. All right, look, mate, we're gonna clean up your breakfast, we're gonna clean up your lunch, still have your evening meal flexible. You know what, we're going to give you one takeaway night a week. We're going to start there, right? Once you've started there and you've tackled that, then begin going the other way. Because most people just are not ready to fucking cold turkey quit and go monk mode and basically fix everything at the same time. There might be people that are ready to do that, but then it probably needed to have had some experience doing that before. If they've lived away for 20 years, look, you are not going to unpack that in the space of a few weeks. It's going to take time. And there's some ways and adopting a new identity, but most people aren't at that level of spiritual able to do that and just switch their identity overnight. Most people are going to need to be coached, right? So find out the reason why they're struggling to adhere to the plan, focus on the biggest domino first, then bring on the next one, and just fucking communicate, be a human. Because if you don't understand why, if you're just saying, if the person, for example, clients that tell me I haven't got time is never the problem, but so many people will say, I just don't have time this week. It's my job to find out what the real reason is. Is it because they're fucking knackered from work, right? What's the reason with that? Is it sleep that's the problem? Is it the fact that they're eating like shit, right? Because then I can explain to them, look, we need to address sleep, we need to address food, and then you're gonna stop feeling so fucked after work, right? Because we're caring for your body a little bit better. But clients will often throw up a front as an excuse. It's your job as a coach to find out what the actual problem is and give a solution to that. Question number 11, what's your approach when a client stops progressing? Same answer, why they're not progressing. What's the reason why things have slowed down, have stopped? When you know what the reason is. Do they need more food? Do they need less food? Do they need more cardio? Do they need more steps? Do they need a deload? Do they need a refeed? Do they need some high days? Has their runway with a specific movement run out? Do we need a new movement now? Right, if you stop progressing, find out why. And when you find out why, solve that problem. Question number 12. All right. How does coaching change when someone has no motivation? If someone has no motivation, it depends on the phase they're in. If it's in the beginning, listen, you've got to cultivate that. Motivation is one of those things, again, it's the cliche thing, rely on discipline, not motivation. But there has to be some kind of motivation in the beginning to actually build discipline. Discipline isn't a decision that just happens overnight. It's built from action and habit over time, right? So it's not just going to happen. So I think that's fucking pointless when people say, oh, well, fuck motivation, bro. You just have to rely on discipline. Discipline is cultivated, it's developed. You don't just fucking, like, motivations that, when people do that, and you see the guys saying, oh, and this is the guys that you see, they're lock in for a couple months and then fuck it off for the rest of the year. It's like, oh, I'm disciplined, bro. No, you're motivated for 2 months, which means you do everything right. And then disciplines, when that motivation's run out, you fucked off and you're not doing it anymore. That's not discipline, that is motivation, right? Because there's a reason for you to train. You've got something coming up at the end of that. That's discipline. That's motivation, sorry. Discipline comes about when you're doing, again, things most of the year correctly, because then that's becoming ingrained in your identity inside your routine. So yeah, look, when motivation drops, it can be a process break. Give them a little bit of time off. Let them revert back to some bad habits, especially if you've been doing it for long enough. And then they're kind of going to go, fuck, I feel dreadful, I need to get back in the gym. Then just when motivation becomes at its peak, throw them back into the process. If it's in the beginning, good old-fashioned accountability. Remind them of why they're doing this. And potentially, if it's too much and they're not motivated to do everything, again, simplify it a little bit. Get the basics right. Again, maybe get 1 meal of their day consistent and healthy, right? And then, because they can probably do that without too much hassle. Get them training 3 times a week. Once they're doing that consistently, then up it. Also, you have to understand that everybody exists on a spectrum, right? Of the perfect plan to get the results as fast as possible, all the way down to doing nothing at all, getting unhealthy, getting fat. Everyone is happy on a certain point in that scale, and they can move around as time goes on. If you try and get somebody to be super optimal and do everything right, but they should be existing somewhere in the middle, they're not going to want to follow the process. The motivation's gone. In the same breath, if you have someone that really wants to fucking nail things and wants to really progress and has huge goals, but you're saying, no, bro, just focus on just 3 days a week at the moment, like, motivation's going to go because they want to do more, right? They want to do more. You have to carefully balance these things up, yeah? Don't you dare fucking say it. If you, alright, you know what question number it is, so I'm going to keep going. What is the mindset you've seen in the biggest long-term difference in clients? Probably that one I was just talking about. They've stopped seeing it as a seasonal thing, and it's become ingrained in who they are now. They're someone who trains, they're someone who eats well. As opposed to the beginning, bro, how do I do this for a few months? How do I get in shape for these few months? And then they do that, and then maybe they have a little break, and then they revert, and then it's like, oh, I have to get in shape again, man, I let things fall apart. Long-term clients, the ones that do the best, they begin to live and breathe this shit, right? And again, that's not to say that they lose their entire life to training. I've got some clients, I've got one long-term client who is training twice a week, has multiple meals out of his missus like throughout the week. Pretty much does, you know, a lot of what he wants. The fucking battery there, but he does pretty much a lot of what he wants to. Yet he still stays in the same shape, right? Again, there might be some periods where he does a little bit better, cuts down a little bit, but he stays where he is because it's just part of who he is now. That you really do have to change the person's identity to like being somebody that is disciplined, does the right thing more often than not. It's one of those. All right, let's do 5 more, and then we're gonna get to things. I've got about 10 more, but I haven't got time to do 10 more, so I'll save them for the next one. What the fuck was that? What do I do when I plateau on lifts? Again, identify the reason why. If you're in the growth phase, for example, are you having enough food? Is your scale weight slowly increasing? I generally anywhere from half a pound to a pound a week, right? If it is increasing slowly over time, right, then food, you probably having enough protein. Is recovery good? Is your recovery good week to week? Are you sleeping? Are you hydrating? If all those things are in the right place, then okay. Was it progressing up to a certain point? And then is that the specific lift that's getting weaker? If it's specifically that lift, we can think about giving you a different movement pattern potentially, right? Especially if it's been for a consistent amount of time, especially if you're starting to really not enjoy it. If it's that lift, but also a bunch of other lifts, you probably need a deload maybe. Or if you're in the depths of a diet, you might need some more food. That's it. So 4th and final question, what else have we got? How would you balance pushing clients hard versus when they need a break? This is very individual. And this is very hard to manage for different people because some people say they're fucked, but really they need to learn how to get to that next gear. They need to learn that next thing. Other people I've got, my client Blake is a perfect example of this. In his biofeedback, energy, 10 bro. Stress, 10. That's good in my sheet. He's like, yeah, no stress. Focus, 10. Everything's 10, everything's great. And then all of a sudden, he'll be like, bro, I'm fucked, man, out of nowhere. Or like, oh, I've had this really busy week, or I've had no time to do everything. No, bro, you're in the gutter. Like, understand, like, what you need is a break. You need to learn to communicate that. It's funny because we have a similar conversation every week about it, but it's kind of for the individual, and then just looking at their information, right? If it's been consistently bad, then you probably need to, again, if they're dieting, give them more food, give them a training break. If they're in a growth phase, give them a training break. Just like look at the information in front of you. And also listen to them, because you will begin to see signs before they are burnt out, right? I've got another client, Dan, who's been with me for a very long time now, and with him, every now and again, it's just a little process break. That's all he needs, because he gets to the point where it's fed up without not making too much progress and etc. It can become very monotonous, right? So it's as you tackle anything else, it's as you tackle burnout with work, right? Just make sure that you're doing everything right in terms of like your rest and recovery, and if you are, then you probably just need some extended rest and recovery, or change things up a little bit as well. That can breathe some fresh air. 3 more questions before I go, because I got work, baby. How close to failure should I be training on most sets? Just send it, bro. Just fucking send it. Listen, when it comes to proximity to failure and that debate online, my question is this. I struggle with this, what I'm about to talk about. All right, reps in reverse, 3. I want to leave 3 reps in the tank for this set. How are you measuring that? By feel? Is feeling quantitative? Let me explain, because I'm being fucking pretentious using big words. Is this set felt 3 reps from failure? Is that the same as scientifically this set is 3 reps from the point at which you can no longer recruit muscle fibers to complete that set? Those are 2 very different things. Is it actually 3 reps from failure, or does it feel like 3 reps from failure? Because all you have to go off is feel, and feel is subjective, feel is not accurate. Therefore, I think for the vast majority of people, you're going to struggle to hit that to actually be close to that failure point, right? Now, if you're smashing yourself all of the time, yes, potentially, you might need more recovery, you might need to recover sooner. So yes, like balls to the wall sets, I think a good generic rule of thumb for most people is work from what feels like 1 rep away and all the way to failure. I generally like to do this. I make sure that my top set is properly to failure, and maybe in my back off set there's 1 left in the tank, or vice versa. But for the most part, I'm generally training to failure all the time. And look, like, in the minute I'm working probably 50 hours a week, I'm managing a lot of different things. I've got my cherries in a lot of different pies. I'm out here shooting videos in a field. I've got a lot on my plate, and yet I think even though I'm dieting, my last dealer, I think it was probably 8 weeks growing and a further 4 weeks into the diet this week. So what's that, 9 weeks before I took 4 days off, and then I continued and I've felt better than ever. Train to failure, man. Learn how to do that, because that teaches you it's more than just your training progress as well. If you're going to keep stopping shy of failure because that's comfortable and maybe that's what I should do, that's more optimal. What about that in the rest of your life, right, where you need to find that next gear? You need to do that a little bit more. Oh no, short, I'll just stop. I'm capable of more, but I'll just stop. Second to last question. What does getting into good shape actually require you to sacrifice? Ooh, banger questions, bangers. Your old self. That's what it requires you to sacrifice. Because look, you have a goal. Your goal exists some point in the future, and that is different to what you are currently experiencing now. Right, this is a different environment, a different life to where you are right now. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a goal, because there'd be nothing to change, and if there's nothing to change, it's not a goal. So in order to become, there has to be change that takes place here in the middle. In order to change, you do have to become a different person. You have to probably think a little bit differently. You have to have a different set of habits, a different set of routines. You have to be different. Doesn't mean you have to become a dick. Doesn't mean you have to change political beliefs. Doesn't mean you have to change how empathetic you are. Doesn't mean you have to change. You don't have to become, because I feel like that's sometimes the look, right, of like people that are ultra disciplined and super developed, let's say, is that you have to become a little hard and you have to become cold. No, you can still be the same person that you are in that sense. But yes, you have to eat better food and look after yourself a little bit more. Yes, you have to probably prioritize sleep a little bit more. Yes, you have to train consistently. Yes, you have to train hard, right? Those things have to change. So whether you like it or not is another thing. And yes, you might want to get in shape once of your life and leave it for the rest of it. But then, to me, not even training then. Like, you're doing it for the end result. The process can be so endurable and you can feel so good. People that just aggressively diet and then try and aggressively grow, you're feeling like shit through that process. For me, I know how good it feels when I'm slowly making progress in the gym. I've got loads of food coming in, training, I'm feeling full and I'm feeling strong, I'm sleeping and I feel good, my body's healthy, I'm getting all the right vitamins, all the right this and that, and I feel incredible. Look, the sun's out. I'm even like weeks into a diet now and I feel so good. That's available to you if you can unpack the things that are holding you back right now. But a lot of things are going to have to change. You are going to have to change. But that doesn't mean you become a different person or adopt a new personality, right? Because I think like people sometimes confuse that. Yeah? So especially like some people have like friends and family that's like, oh, you've changed. No, more often than not, people that feel that you've changed, it's sometimes you're just holding up that mirror to them, right? That's like, look, I changed and you've seen me get into shape. You would love to get into shape, but you're struggling with that process. Maybe you're not willing to sacrifice the things necessary. And then like you've changed, like you're arrogant now. No, like you're just making them feel bad about themselves. And that's awful, that's bad. But maybe if they get out of their own neurotic view of that and then ask for help, like, how do I do what you've done, bro? Let's fucking help each other. That's what we're here for. Last question, baby. Let's have a look. What do we want to do? What are your long-term goals? Damn. Help as many people as possible. I'm not really bothered about making a shitload of money. I think that probably will come as a byproduct of being good at my job. But I'll be patient in that process. I want to give affordable coaching to the masses if possible, in one form or another, because I think it's something that everybody needs, but not everyone has the luxury of affording a PT or affording an online coach, which is better than a PT. If you don't know the difference, get to know. There's a big difference. I think what I spoke about today should tell you everything you need to know. And then personally, aside from that, produce the best physique that I possibly can. I'd like to say win some natural bodybuilding shows. It's going to sound like participation trophy-esque, but I can't control somebody else's superior genetics. I can't control who shows up to my show on what day. My coach told me this. Therefore, I just need to produce the best physique that I can, and hopefully that's rewarded with a medal. If it's not, I've enjoyed the process. I look sick, so that's all right. On a more personal level, have some kids, have a nice house. Doesn't need to be huge, just does the job. Hopefully be in a world that isn't at war and fucking Things are pretty crazy out there at the minute, pretty wild, pretty fucked. So it'd be nice for that to change. Like, how much can I change? I highly doubt it. I'm just a guy that lifts weights from A to B. Be a good person. Do what's right. Live in accordance to my virtues. Fucking Marcus Aurelius, fanboy. But live in a way that's right to me. Treat people the way they want to be treated. Put good out there in the world. It seems like I'm virtue signaling now. Look, it's selfish. This is the maddest thing. I was having this conversation with my girlfriend actually the other day, and I was saying you could actually view being a good person as selfish, because if I'm a bad person, it makes me feel like shit. So I'm a good person and I help people because it makes me feel nice inside to help them. But just that, it makes me feel nice. So I'm doing it because that's right, what I think makes me feel the best, gives me the most purpose. Fucking fairness. And the world isn't fair. Well, maybe we should make it more fair if we can do that. Train fucking hard, eat well, live a good life, have some laughs, eat some quality food. That's it, man. Travel, see some cool places, whilst also building a business that brings affordable coaching to everyone. That'd be sick. Work with some great people, make some good relationships as well through coaching, because that's the biggest thing, is like the friendships that I get from coaching over time, getting to know people better, having that impact. Shout out impact. That's what I want. QnA over. Peace.